All right, it is 3 o'clock, and so we will start this meeting. Um, the first thing I want to do is tell you what we've got going on today. We have 4 presentations. First one will be me, and I'm going to be talking about crepe myrtle trees and lilac bushes. Then Steve Jackson is going to talk about his home layout, which is a ZoomTRAK layout. And last, John Doehring is going to confess to us. His presentation is Confessions of an Armchair Modeler. So we have a full slate today. And if you all are ready, we'll go ahead and get started. And I'm going to start out first. So Bruce, I'm going to take the screen share thing and away we go. I was messing around working on my home layout and trying to figure out a way to do something a little nicer than just this green foam that we use for shrubbery all the time. And I thought, you know, one of the things we had up in the town that I'm modeling where I grew up were lilac trees. And down here in the south where I am now, we have crepe myrtle trees. And they can be more bush or they can be more a tree, but they're very common and they're colorful. They have nice flowers on them, and they make for a nice looking addition to your layout. So I got to thinking about that, and I thought, you know, well, let me just tell you first, to do that, you're going to need. I like to use a soldering tool, soldering gun for this rather than a soldering iron, and you'll see why in just a minute. You're going to need a pair of rail nippers, a heavy-duty set of dikes, and a pair of needle nose pliers. And then what I thought was the 12-gauge stranded zip cord that we use underneath NRail modules would be perfect for this. So what I did is I took a piece of that, cut off a 1/4-inch tip, and tinned it, as you can see in this picture. Then from that, I cut the whole thing to about about an inch to 1.25 inches. You know, I mean, and you take that 1/4 inch off, it's 3/4 of an inch to an inch, which means it's about a 10 to a 13-foot tall tree, which is kind of the right thing for a lilac or a crepe myrtle shrub. And you can see there where I've done that. Once you get that done, you strip off the rest of the insulation, and you see this. And then you simply take your fingers and spread each of those little individual wires until you get something shaped like this. And that gets it spread out, and that's kind of like the shape, but it isn't all flat on top. So you need to take your rail nippers and kind of shape it a little bit so it has the shape of a tree or a shrub or a bush. And then if you're going to do it, why the hell not do it big? Make several of them. When you get them all done, then you paint them. And most all wood without a heavy bark, or even with bark, turns out to be gray. So paint them gray is my suggestion. Once you get them painted and it dries, what am I going back to that for? Okay, I got a deal in there. Okay, that you paint them, then they look like this. At least the one on the right is. The one on the left looks a little bit fuzzy. I may have only had my left eye closed. So you take that, and you get some fine turf and put in a little tub. Grab the tree that you've painted with your needle nose pliers, and then you spray it with adhesive. And this stuff you can buy at Walmart, you can buy it at a hobby store, any number of places carries this stuff. It stays damp for about 30 seconds, and then it dries. But that's all you need. You spray it, you dip it in the goop. Once you get it in there pretty good, you pick it up, you shake it off. You may have to hold the pliers in your hands and pound it on the table a few times to shake off the excess. And by the way, I did learn something by doing this. If you just do it like this, you're going to get a bunch of that sticky goop all over your pliers. I've learned now to wrap the pliers in a paper towel and then grab the thing, and your pliers stay clean. You shake off the excess when it's dry. My favorite store is a dollar store, and at the dollar store you can buy fingernail polish, which doesn't absorb, it kind of sticks on top. So it works well in this case. I found some lavender, and when I was through, I had this, which I think looks even closer than the 2-foot rule. That looks like a lilac bush or a crepe myrtle tree. And I was real pleased with it. So I took that then, spread the branches a little bit, reshaped it, and then I put it, I have a little downtown park I'm making, and across the back you'll see 4 of those lilac bushes. There's another view of them and another view of them. Well, that was all fine and good, and I did all that, and that was done last month. But a couple of nights ago, I got to thinking, and I know I've been warned not to do that. Thinking's not a good thing for me. But I thought, if I can do that with that 12-gauge wire, what could I do else? This is kind of like that ad you see on TV, but wait, there's more. We can do the same thing at a lot smaller scale and do rose bushes. Because when I looked at let me go previous here. When I looked at my little gazebo on the other side, some rose bushes that look really fine over there. And I thought, yeah, let's do that. So this little yellow thing here, that is a short piece, 3/8 inch long with 1/8 strip, just like we did the big stuff. That is decoder wire. When you do a hardwired decoder, you get some of this ultra fine wire. You notice there's only about 6 strands of wire in that braided cable, in that cable. I tried just painting it and then painting the deal, and that it doesn't look very good. It doesn't look good at all. So I thought, well, then let's do what we did with the other one. But the thing is, these wires are so fine that you can't stick them down into that bucket of ground cover. They'll just bend over and wad up. So you spread them, you paint them green, and then you take them. This time I did wrap it in the cloth, and for these being so small, I had to use hemostats. Spray them with the sticky stuff, and then instead of dipping them in the bucket of stuff, I put some of that ground cover in a salt shaker and just spray it on them, and it worked like a charm. And I didn't go make another picture, pretend that purple is now red. But again, these are rose bushes, so they can be pretty much any color you want. You paint them, and that's what you get. And it's amazing how close to realistic they look. Again, for N scale, they work really well. And this thing takes no time, and it scraps stuff that you got around. So this is my 10-minute how to do something quick and dirty that can be a lot of fun and can add something that looks a lot, to me, a lot more realistic than a clump of green foam. So that's our little quick how-to. And the next thing is to, let's see. Steve, are you ready to go with your presentation, Steve Jackson?
Sure am.
All right, Steve Jackson is in Fairfax, Virginia, and he's a very famous guy. If you're into ZoomTRAK, you'll have heard about the Jackson Corner. Well, this is that guy, and he is a legend with the T-Trackers, and he's got something that I think you're really going to enjoy seeing. So, Steve, take it away, please.
Sure, thanks. So I did this as a pre-recorded video because that would make me a little more sane. So let me try to do a quick screen share. Put the video up. All right, if somebody could just drop a note in the chat as soon as I push play and make sure I know I've got the audio. And here we go.
We've still got you live, Steve. We haven't gotten your anything. It worked fine the other night, didn't it?
It does. That's what you get when you got too many screens. All right, hold on. Sorry about that. Technology's not always my friend. All right.
We're good. We're going. Whoop, now we're back. Yep.
Steve Jackson, and welcome to a brief tour of my home layout that I call the Enigmatic line. As you can see, I have the layout right behind me now, and that's been the case through all of my personal and work-related meetings throughout the pandemic. Although this is a case based out of necessity, because this was the only quiet place I had in the house to set up a home office, having my office in the train room has really been a conversation starter throughout the pandemic. And that's why Razor asked me if I'd be willing to talk about my layout a little bit, because he had seen this during meetings we have for the NRail board. So I live in the Washington, D.C. suburbs, and I've been in Scalar for almost 40 years. There was an overview of my history in model railroading in the May and June NRail newsletter. So if you're interested in more of my background, you can access that newsletter from the member section of nrail.org. Over the years, I built a series of layouts ranging from simple 2-foot by 4-foot sheet of plywood with an oval and some sidings on it, to an NTRAK based layout in my basement, as well as shelf style layouts that are built on the wall and encircling a room in the basement. But particularly when my kids were little, they used to love to go downstairs and play trains with me, and they very much enjoyed each of the layouts that we had over the years. But my current layout's based on ZoomTRAK modules. The space where my current layout is once housed a shelf style layout. However, I was making very slow progress with the layout because I kept spending most of my time working on my ZoomTRAK modules. And eventually I started to play around with the idea of how would I fill the space that I have available to me with a modular layout. And the tipping point really came as I had this space set up and I'd measured it and figured out what size tables I needed. And I owned a couple of standard folding 6-foot tables that I used for essentially work sessions, being able to set up my modules just to test them. And so I had a couple 6-foot tables, but that really didn't fit what I needed in this particular space. So that tipping point came when I was looking on Craigslist one time for folding tables and found a guy that was selling a whole array of tables. He had a business where he closes down office buildings. And so he had a bunch of surplus tables that came out of some building that he closed. And so he had 4-foot, 5-foot, 6-foot, and 8-foot tables. So I went and kind of sketched out, actually in Visio, but I sketched out this space and set out the tables as what configuration we would need and what tables I would need. And then I went out to that guy's shop and purchased all the tables that I needed to set up this C-shaped space in the basement. So all the tables have the same height, they're all the same style, and then they fit into this space very nicely with very little gaps in between them. So I have a fair number of sort of show-ready ZoomTRAK modules that I try to keep packed up on a shelf in the closet around the corner, because I don't really want to have to be in a situation where I have to tear apart my home layout in order to go to a show. And so this means that essentially my home layout is perpetually a workbench. The modules that are here are typically the ones that are in work that I'm still doing things to and still making progress with, sometimes very slow progress, but progress nonetheless. And so this layout constantly changes, hence the name Enigmatic, is I've had I have a lot of change that goes on, and I'm constantly pulling modules in and out of it as time goes along. And some of the modules that are here I actually will take to shows, so I might take them out temporarily just to take them to a show. Prior to the pandemic, this layout was a dog bone in the shape of a C, like a capital letter C. But right now it's actually an L shape because part of the C I had to take off in order to put this desk space in. I've got a couple of diagrams you're seeing on the screen that sort of highlight some of the designs that I've had over the years and give you a sense for what I've been able to do with ZoomTRAK to build a very flexible, different, and dynamic layout depending on my mood and what I wanted to really be doing with the layout down in the basement. The end loops on my module, the dog bones, are based on a design that I found called Centered Balloon Track with Siding. It's a track plan that's been posted to the ZoomTRAK Wikidot site that Vic McT from North Texas provides for the rest of the ZoomTRAK community. And I modified that plan slightly in a couple of ways. One is I wanted to use number 6 turnouts, not because I like them more, but simply because I happen to have those on hand. So I didn't want to have to spend any new money to buy tracks since I already had something. So I modified it to be able to use the number 6 turnouts, but retain the 33 millimeter spacing that we're accustomed to. And then I also adjusted the module because I didn't want to have a whole entire balloon track. I wanted to be able to extend and collapse that balloon with other straight modules. So I built really what I call the balloon throat. So it's just the first part that spreads in half, and then I use a 180 or 2 corners on the end in order to make the end of the loop. When I had it in a C shape, I actually had the balloons extended so that I had a long siding there that I could park a train on the inside track and then use the outside track to run the through traffic through. Because of the way I have the dog bones set up, the front and the back track, I've got double crossover so I can move between the rails. And in order to do that, then the balloon tracks need auto reversers on them. So I do use Digitrak's AR1 DCC auto reversing controllers. And I've got one set up on both the inside and outside of each of the end loops. And the idea there being that if I extend that balloon pretty far and use that as a passing siding, I might have trains coming out of the loops at the same time. So I'd need to be able to auto reverse both of the 2 tracks. So I've got those 2 tracks set up separately. So there's 2 auto reversers on each end, one for each of the 2 tracks on the balloons. And as you can see, the balloon tracks are definitely a work in progress, or the balloon throats. And they've got some basic scenery. I have a sense for what I want to do, but I just haven't had the time to get those set up. And my wife's family is Czech. She was born here, but their heritage is Czech. And so we've gone over there, and I've really enjoyed riding the rails. In the Czech Republic, they use the trains extensively for travel around the country, and it's a very affordable and reliable way to get from place to place. So unfortunately, there's very little Czech equipment that's been produced over the years, but I've tried to pick up things when they're offered. And when I could afford to do so, they're often quite expensive, but I pick up the pieces I can when I can. And as a result, though, I've been able to pull together a pretty decent Czech freight and passenger roster. Since I had Czech equipment now, I thought it was time to build some Czech themed modules as well. And the most recent project I have is the inside corner that you kind of see over my shoulder here. And it's made up of a double at the end, a triple, a inside corner, and then one more triple here on the end. And that large L shape is 4 modules. And those 4 modules can be reconfigured so long as you have the 2 end pieces. You could remove the 2 middle ones if you want because they have the same track configuration each time, or you can reorder them if you want, or use just 2 or 3 of the 4 pieces if you wanted. And so it gives me flexibility. I've been adding scenery as well as that module set I've been including lights on, just because I thought it was kind of fun. Really was led by the fact that my wife years ago had found it's a very traditional Czech style lamppost that they have. They're about this tall and in scale, but it's a lamppost that they have all over the Czech Republic in different parks and city streets that you see. And it's just a unique thing to them. And so she found some years ago, so I wanted to include the lamppost. And while I was at it, I was like, well, if I've got the lamppost, which happens to be functional LED, since I had that, why not power it? And if I'm going to power that, why not power some other stuff? So several of the buildings on the modules behind me actually have lights inside of them, or lights under the awnings more often than not as well, so that sort of it exemplifies at night. Business is closed, but you have the loading dock lit up or other areas lit up based on leveraging those lights that are up inside of the loading dock areas on those buildings. And on one end of the layout, I actually have one of the original modules that I built. It's a 180, so it's the same as 2 corners. It's called Wandering Creek, and it's been a hit at the shows over the years because it includes tunnel on each end. They're very short tunnels, but it still doesn't matter. The kids and even adults love to seem to watch the trains coming in and out of the tunnel. It adds a little mystery to it, and it's particularly being an end cap, the 180. Otherwise, it seems like a really tight corner, but you kind of have a train pop out of a tunnel, do a quick corner, and then pop back into a tunnel to get out. So that's been a module that I've been around. I've had that for almost 20 years now. And then the other end loop, so I talked about having the 2 balloon throats. The other throat that I have leverages 2 corners. One's called Camping Corner, which was built by one of a former friend of mine who passed away, Nick Sklias. and it was part of camping scene. He had a corner and a straight module, and another member and I sort of split that set up, and I got the corner one. And I always enjoyed that one because it has a horse scene along the edge of it. There's some horse riders along the edge of the track. My daughter loves to ride horses, and so it was something that I thought she would really enjoy, and I just liked it. It made me think, so it makes me think of her. And so I have that module over there as well. And then next to it is a module that was a Cato corner module kit, that new kit that came out with Woodland Scenics. And it's one of those kits that I wanted to experiment with. And I've got it, it's in a very similar scene, but it's not finished yet. It needs some trees and things added to it, but it's intended to be a mate to that. So the two of those together can create kind of that 180, those two corners together on the end for a consistent scene with a little hillside on it behind those horses. And then in order to be able to move between the two tracks, I mentioned earlier, I have a double crossover. I've got one of my original modules. It's called Peaceful Crossing, and it features a Cato double crossover. And it's been extremely reliable over the years. I've had great luck with it. I actually modified it originally. There's information on the ZoomTRAK Wikidot site that about how I modified it. I actually added some wires inside of it in order to make sure that it passed electricity through it, because there's a sort of a quirk with the way that they're built. And then one thing to note is that module, because it's one of my original ones, the original standard called for modules that were 308 millimeters long, so 2 millimeters shorter than the 310 of the track, and then 210 millimeters deep. That's about 8¼ inches, and that was driven by the size of an A4 sheet of paper. And so A4 sheets of paper are 210 millimeters deep. And so this is one of my original modules, so it's built to that original standard. That module, along with my 2 junction modules, the original junction modules, as well as several of my other modules, were all a part of the first ZoomTRAK convention. There's a plaque on the front of that module for that. And that first ZoomTRAK convention was held in conjunction with the Capital Limited 2004 In-Scale East Convention in Chantilly, Virginia. That was held in August of 2004. We had a large contingent of ZoomTRAK modules there. The intent there was not to be a world's largest layout, although it may have been because that was so early in the life of ZoomTRAK, but it was, the largest layout was only 2 tables long. But we did have lots of other individual and singular layouts, and Lee Monaco Fitzgerald, when she was still alive, she was the coordinator for that show and set that up at the Capital Limited convention. So I participated there with several modules that I had. I do power my modules with Digitrak's DCC system. I keep the command station and the PM42 in a wooden box underneath the layout. The box was built for me by a friend of mine, Jim Davis. I've got a duplex radio receiver, so that's the Digitrak's UR92, as well as several UP5 panels around. The UP5s allow me to plug throttles in anywhere I need them. And I find that it's just really handy to have those available as often as possible. Anytime I build a module set that may have more than a couple of modules in the set, I'll make sure one of those has a UP5, because I'm a member of the Northern Virginia NTRaK Club. And our club uses Digitrak's equipment, so it's just great to have those UP5s built right into the module, so it's very easy to wire them up when we're setting up the layout and ensure that we have LocoNet connection all over the place. So I've really enjoyed giving you this brief overview of my layout, the Enigmatic line. I enjoy the dynamic nature of using ZoomTRAK modules for my home layout because I can change it whenever I want to. There are certainly certain compromises to using ZoomTRAK for my home layout. However, I feel like the compromises are great for me. It gives me everything that I really need, the flexibility. I can run operations on it because I have sidings that are functional on most of my modules, so I can actually do operational stuff when I want to. And then the fact that I can really change the layout up. So over the course of several months, it can look quite different. And so that to me is really great because it's ever changing. I don't ever get bored of the layout because I can always just change it again. So take care, and thanks very much for tuning in.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you very much. It's a very nice looking layout. We are right at 30 minutes in, and our next presentation, John, are you online?
I am. I'm here.
All right. Well, what we usually do at this place is we take about 30 seconds to a minute for everybody to kind of stand up, stretch their legs, take a sip of water, sitting for an hour. You don't want to get leg cramps or anything like that. So let's everybody stand up and run around the mulberry bush, and in about 30 to 60 seconds, then we'll go to John and have his presentation. So I'll shout at you here in just a few seconds. All right, if everyone's back, John Doehring is a very popular man in the model railroad community, and he's known most all over the northeastern United States. He has several things that make him that popular. It's not the bow tie, though. His other thing. John, if you go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us what your confessions are as an armchair modeler.
Oh, that's great, Razor. Thanks. Well, thanks very much. Listen, it's great to be here. I feel a little bit like people didn't tell me the rules of engagement because we just saw trains, actual trains moving across the screen a minute ago, and I think it's unfair to have to follow train porn as nice as that. But anyway, hi everyone. I'm John Doehring, and I'm here to share with you some more confessions of me as a still reforming armchair model railroader. And specifically what I have for you today is just some ideas, 7 steps to getting started or getting restarted, being active, and really enjoying this wonderful hobby of ours in model railroading. Now, let me start by kind of acknowledging that if you're on this call today, you're probably a lot like me. That is, you have this model railroad disease, the hobby pox. And so when you spread out your money on the table and figure out what you're going to spend it on, maybe it looks kind of like this. In other words, you're crazy nuts about trains, just like I am and have been for a really long time. But that leads me to a question, and always has, and this is my first confession. I've been a model railroader all my life, since I was about 12 years old. But for most of that time, for 40 plus years, I didn't have a layout. I didn't have hardly anything to show for it except perhaps a really big stack of magazines. And I wonder if some of you have struggled over the years to kind of get out of the armchair and get things going and get things sort of happening as a hobbyist. And 40 years, it's a long, long time. We're talking about the Munich Olympics or the Nixon era, or not the end of the space shuttle program, but actually the beginning of the space shuttle program. It was a long time ago. And for a long time, all I did was think and dream about what I might do some other day. And so a question is, why? Why do we sometimes do that? Even though we're like really enthusiastic about a hobby, we don't make the kind of progress we might. Well, part of it is, and I've sort of learned as I've gotten older, to not apologize for this. I am a dreamer, and being a dreamer and thinking about things and planning them in my head is a part of the hobby. And it's a part that I enjoy. But, you know, you can go too far in the sense of constantly thinking about things and dreaming about them and not getting things done. Why is it that we don't get things done? Well, for me, I was concerned about the lack of experience that I had, the investment I'd have to make in time and money and other kinds of resources, other distractions and priorities in life. We all have those. And I think these last two really reflecting on this, the fear of doing something wrong, right? Of not kind of starting on the right track, of trying to have to figure out what everything is before you even start. The fear of wasting time or having to do it over. And kind of, again, the sense of trying to figure out, how do I do this perfect before I even start? And those of you who have been around for a while and who've built things, you know that I'm dead wrong when I think that way, right? The whole way you're successful as a model railroader is by doing things. And you really can't avoid some of those mistakes. That's how you learn and that's how you grow. But those were some obstacles for me. Well, what changed about 10 years ago as I started getting close to being 50 years old, you know, I started asking myself, am I ever going to do anything? Or am I going to run out of time before I even start? So my motivation changed. And then my vision changed, and I started really focusing in on what it was I wanted to accomplish. And then my involvement changed. And that leads me to kind of where I am today. Actually, this thinking, sort of part one, if you will, is now several years old. And I first sort of unveiled these ideas, these secrets for me, the things I learned in a 2014 article in N-Scale magazine, but I got a couple of other things to add to those. And this is one of my new confession today, is to realize that starts and stops are a-okay. Starts and stops in the hobby. And not only that, but it's sort of the natural flow of things. Your interest and your participation, your activity in the hobby will ebb and flow over time as it sort of fits in with the other things that are going on, the other seasons of your life. For the longest time, I was always apologizing for that, but that's how life is, right? So it doesn't all come in a straight line. So thanks to Pete Seeger and, of course, the book of Ecclesiastes. So here are my 7 steps to action. The idea here is some of these will be really, really obvious to some of you, and perhaps others won't. But if there's 1 or 2 things in here that get you kind of started or restarted, then this will be successful. And keep in mind that action is a relative term. Some modelers are super fast and they get a whole lot done really, really quickly, and others are, much slower. And I'm kind of on the slower end of that. So success secret number 1, join in the fray. Join something. Find your local tribe. Now, everybody on the line today is an NRail member, I think, or most everybody, right? So you already have ostensibly a tribe. But for me, 10, 12 years ago, finding NTRAK and the local Northeast NTRAK group up here in New England was a big deal for me. It was my people, my crowd, the people I could hang out with. Now, let me confess to you that I did not set out to go find myself a bunch of friends. I'm sort of an introverted guy and I didn't really think I needed a lot of friends. What I needed was to learn how to do stuff, right? I needed to find people who could teach me. And so I leaned in and joined NTRAK primarily because I wanted to get behind the ropes. I wanted to get inside the circle. I wanted to look under the modules so that I could learn how to build one myself. And being a member of NTRAK got me all that, because there is, of course, all this how-to stuff. And I got to say, 10 years later, the NTRAK how-to manual has been one of the most important pieces of information for me as a sort of a junior budding model railroader, a novice. And of course, we got the newsletter all the time and all the other things that you can get in the NRail store that provide resources about how to do stuff. But of course, being a member of the club or the tribe is a lot more than that. Here's some pictures of the Winterfest convention. Every year we have our annual convention in association with the Big Model Railroad Hobby Show in Springfield, Massachusetts. And I did find that in addition to learning a lot about how to do things, that I made lots of friends, and there was a big social dimension to model railroading that I wasn't really expecting. After that, and kind of another big game changer for me, was becoming a member of the NMRA. Some of you might be members there. Some of you might have been members in the past, or you've heard about this. I'm a member of the NMRA and the Northeastern region and the hub division here in the Boston area. And 2, this has become, for me, another really important tribe. And there's a lot of things that I get out of being in the National Model Railroad Association, including local division meetings, more access to experts and their experience, resources like newsletters and conventions and magazines and the achievement program. A couple of things I'll say about that in a minute, kind of encouraging continued growth and development as a hobbyist. There's a partnership program today where you can get discounts on things, standards and conformance. And again, friends. I didn't realize, again, that I wanted to have a bunch more friends. I thought I would just be in my basement building my model railroad, but that turns out to be a super important part of the hobby. Here's just some pictures of our layout at the Boston Museum of Science every year. It's a world-class museum, and we have a display there every year. And, again, I didn't know that was going to happen, but I've enjoyed volunteering in that event now for a couple of years. Here's some other pictures of me along the way. This is not about me, but the thing I wanted to point out, and what's common about all these shots, is big smile. Being a model railroad is supposed to be fun, and it's not all about being down in the basement, but all kinds of other things that have happened because I joined the tribe. And of course, there's so many other things you can join: the N-scale enthusiasts, the historical societies. For me, it's the Anthracite railroads. There's There's Model Rail Radio and a Models Life podcast and some others. There are special interest groups like OPSIG, all kinds of things that you can join in and become more active. And I like to say, and you may somewhat disagree with me, but here's what I believe really in my heart of hearts. If you're doing model railroading by yourself, you're doing it wrong. If you're doing model railroading by yourself, you're not thinking big enough about the kind of satisfaction you can get out of this hobby by doing it socially with others. So number one, join. Number two, plan. Make a plan. Get focused. Get something going. And know that those plans will change, but that's not a reason not to plan. In fact, it's a better reason to plan. Dwight Eisenhower said it this way: plans are nothing, planning is everything. Keeping a constant sort of focus on what is it I'm trying to accomplish, knowing that those will change, but it keeps me from moving around and chasing after everything that's shiny. So I'll tell you in a minute what I built as my first NTRaK module. This is my Take 2, my second set of modules. And there was a clinic about this recently, which you can find on the NRail, I think probably a YouTube channel, and it goes into this a little bit more. But basically, I'm building a set of NTRaK modules today that includes a 4-footer and then a standard 3-foot corner and then an 8-foot module. And they all kind of go together, but they can all stand separately as well. And that allows me to go to a show with all these different options, either a 3-foot, a 4-foot, a 7-foot, an 8-foot, 11, a 12, or a 15. So whatever it is the module coordinator needs, I can bring in a lot of flexibility. I also have this little T-Track module plan design that I haven't built yet, but I have in mind to do something here in the next little while with T-Track, because I don't have a lot of experience there, but we just saw in the last clinic how much you can do with T-Track and how much fun it is. So that's something in sort of my plan. Here's a Fremo in-scale module set that I'm actually working on right now. It's a little bit modified from this plan, but this is sort of an engine terminal facility and built to the Fremo standard. And this is about 30 feet long. So it's pretty big deal. And I'm working on that one right now. In fact, it's kind of out in the garage getting put together in this very moment. Planning to make a plan is not a plan. So get yourself organized, think about what it is you want to do and write it down, get it crystallized, and it helps you to stay focused. Join, plan, build something. You know, I belonged to the local NTRaK club for 3 years maybe before I started building my first module. And then it hit me like somebody had knocked me upside the head. You know what? Modular model railroading is a lot more fun if you have a module. Wow, you know, build something, and it doesn't have to be what I built, and that's a whole clinic by itself, but I made the mistake of really going too big, I think, too early. This doesn't really show it very well. This is my first NTRaK module, broken into 2 pieces. What you need to know is it's 12 feet long. On the lower left is sort of the left-hand side, and then the upper right piece is the other 6 feet to the right. There are 2 layout design elements here that you'll be able to see a little bit more in the next slide. My idea was to have a seam break on either side. So there's sort of a mountain, if you will, on either side. On the left side, there's also sort of a big river that the tracks have to cross. And on the right side, there's kind of a tunnel and trains come out. But I was trying to figure out how to frame it up so that my module would be a scene all by itself. The second layout design element is I very much wanted to try to separate the 3 tracks of the NTRaK standard, because I like the look of a double track main line. And so how could I sort of make the third track kind of a divergent branch line, at least a little bit, on my module? Here's that first module that I'm building sort of, and I've got it out in the yard. On the right-hand side, here's that mountain coming together. It'll have train tracks coming over the top. And again, mostly for a view brake. You can see the divergence on the sort of the middle track here, the middle module piece here. So the inside track is sort of pushed away to make it look more like a double track main line. Here's the other end, kind of a sort of a steep mountain at the end to break the view, and the river. And much as Steve said in the last clinic about how the kids love watching the train coming in and out of his tunnel on the end, this is where all the kids congregate around my module and watch the trains go over these longer bridges. There it is looking down kind of the end point. But the point here is I started really having a lot more fun in the hobby when I started actually building something. A little bit of the underside. I found that I really like the sort of benchwork piece of it. I have a table saw at home, and so I enjoy doing that. The wiring I'd never done before. That was kind of an adventure. Here I am at my very, very first show. I'd say at this point that module was about maybe 50% complete. I kept working on it. I got it to maybe 70 or 80% complete. I took it to 8 or 10 shows per year for about 3 years. And then I started getting to where I thought, you know what, I need to start over. I don't like where I'm headed with this. I'm just going to set this aside and start over. So here are some of those Take Two modules. You can see the plain old 4-footer and the 3-foot sort of standard corner early on as I was building those. This is a little bit of sort of what they look like today. I've got track down. I've got feeder wires dropped. I've built most of the structures that go on there. I'm pretty close. So build something. And I know that's kind of a duh for many of you who either have home layouts or you're longtime modular model railroaders. But there are, I bet, some people on the line who just need to jump in and start building a module or a piece of a home layout, whatever it is. And I encourage you to start small, just build something. Similarly, assemble something, some kits. These were just some pictures of some DPN kits that were my first attempt at doing this since I was a little kid. I bought this book, Basic Structure Modeling, which was really helpful. I started putting these kits together, and I got to tell you, I had so much fun doing this. I had forgotten just how much fun this is. You know, there's nothing big going on here. These are just little simple kits, but I got a big kick out of building them. The next thing for me was to go to train shows or to look on eBay and buy a bunch of, you know, things that people were started giving away or throwing away. I think I paid $10 for all 5 of these, and I cleaned them up and glued some things back together and repainted them. And I got a kick out of started doing that and repurposing them. Very, very basic kits, but something to do, much more active than just reading magazines. I have to warn you, as many of you know, that this will take over your life if you're not careful. This is what what a piece of the kitchen table looked like not too long ago. You know, sort of it becomes a monster all by itself. Now I've got Walther's kits all over the place, and I'm building these various kits for these new modules. But again, so much fun and pretty on the easy beginner sort of novice side. Not too much heavy lifting going on here. And then you can see as I'm starting to put those on the modules, just a whole lot of fun. And don't forget kits. Don't forget structures that have wheels under them too. I got, you know, the last time I put together an Athearn Blue Box kit, I think I was 13 years old. And recently I sat down and put together a whole bunch of them. They take about 15 minutes each, right? And I had a lot of fun, and it sort of made me feel like I was 13 again. And before long, I was on the web late at night buying etched metal roofs to put on these things, and new wheel sets and new couplers. And I'm doing things with these, you know, just basic box cars that I never would have done before. So again, assemble something and do something. It's easy, and see where it takes you. Number 5, then, achieve. And specifically, I want to talk about the NMRA achievement program, but not in the way a lot of people would normally think about that. I think a lot of people have the NMRA achievement program, which leads to the title of Master Model Railroader, as though it would be kind of some lifetime achievement award that gets bestowed upon you if you know how to build the way George Celios does, or the way, you know, somebody who has an extraordinary sort of basement empire. The reality is the achievement program in the NMRA was basically built to encourage people to do stuff and to develop skills they wouldn't otherwise have. The Golden Spike is sort of an entry-level way of doing that. And the idea is you do some things like build some structure kits that are pretty basic, build or customize some rolling stock that's pretty basic, build a small piece of a layout, a module that's 2 foot by 4 foot, a regular standard ZoomTRAK module would fit that bill. Just a couple of other things, and you can get this sort of Golden Spike, sort of an entry way of pushing you to accomplish something that you might otherwise want to do, but not be working on at speed. The program, and we won't go into it in great detail, but just so you'll know, it has these various categories. There are 11 different categories. You have to get at least one in each one of these columns, and you have to get 7 at a minimum total. And so there are things like building cars or building motive power, locomotives, structures or scenery, or building a prototype model scene, things like civil engineering and electrical engineering as building your layout, chief dispatchers, sort of our operations, and then service things like being an author, a volunteer, or an official. I think this is something we could use, in NRail. What if we had more people who were motivated to send in articles for the newsletter, right? Because in part they were thinking about, sort of the author kind of dimension. So that's the idea. Push us into getting a little bit out of our comfort zone and working on things that are all part of the hobby and all sort of focused on building a layout that we can, or a module that we can enjoy, that we might otherwise not jump into. That's the basic idea. 6, operate. This is a secret that I kind of stumbled into, and I got to tell you, it's a real secret here, but some of you know it. Playing with little trains as though they were big trains is a lot of fun. Now, I'm not here to say that, watching the trains sort of run around the room is bad. It certainly isn't. It's one of the things I enjoy very much. But learning about operations, and that I could literally spend 3 hours just moving cars around in a yard and get so absorbed in it, this has become for me one of the most important ways that I enjoy the hobby of model railroading. I have kind of a group that I go to on a semi-regular basis. It's sort of my home run. Here's the superintendent giving instructions to a bunch of us before we start that. Here's me sitting at the dispatcher's desk, the very first time I ever did that. After operating on the layout for a dozen times, I got a chance to dispatch the road, which is another job that's kind of interesting to do. There are weekends that you can go and immerse yourself in this. There are conventions that have operating sessions. There's all kinds of opportunities to sort of weave your way and work your way into that world. And it's a whole world of people who are really, really focused on operating their railroads. Unexpected opportunities. I happen to be at an NMRA National Convention in Kansas City, and I got a chance to operate on this traveling operations roadshow. This is a modular layout in HO scale, which was a lot of fun, and then turned out to be the last time it was offered because the layout owners retired right after that. So that was an unexpected opportunity and just a tremendous amount of fun. Here's a slide that kind of gives you a little picture of what it's like today, right in this moment. And I'm relatively new at this dispatching thing, but here I am as a dispatcher today, and I'm sitting in Massachusetts. The model railroad that I'm dispatching is physically located in Texas. The prototype that's being modeled is actually in Africa. The fellow who's teaching me how to do the dispatching is in Scotland. That's a little bit of a vignette about what we're doing today in this hobby, and it's just amazing. Actually, dispatching remotely is a little bit more prototypical, I think, feels more prototypical than sitting in the layout room. In order to facilitate all of that, this particular layout has live control panels on the web looking at turnout selection and locations of trains. We're sharing paperwork using Google Sheets. We're talking to one another on a phone app for walkie-talkie called Zello. We have a video chat going on Wherebeat in the background in case we have sort of troubleshooting. I mean, we're using technology, and all of this is working, and I didn't have anything to do with it. I was just invited into this world to be a newbie learning dispatcher, and it has just been a super lot of fun. Number 7, share. All right, so what can I share? And that's an encouragement to all of you. Well, you can share your time, your attention, and your ideas. Your time, your attention, and your ideas. What does that mean? Volunteer, get engaged with other people, get engaged with activities, and contribute something. John, can I contribute? You bet you can. You just start somewhere. Here's my first achievement certificate. It's for a volunteer, and I'm glad that I started there one, it takes a little while to get it. And two, this is the way you kind of pay forward. You start in by helping others and supporting kind of the infrastructure around your local hobby scene. And also you get connected with everybody and you make friends and you learn who you can work with and who you can't, and you know who's got the kind of information you need. So starting there, I wish everybody that was involved in the program would kind of do this first, because it was so helpful to just better understand what's around, who's around, and how to get going. I have been, for the last 6 years now, the president of the Northeastern region of the NRA up here in the Northeastern US and in Eastern Canada. It has been a lot of fun, a lot of work at times, but a true honor. And it's just been another great way to stay very, very connected and engage with lots and lots of talented people. Here we've had lots and lots of opportunities to look at things like we're doing today, like ZoomTRAK, NMRAX online. That's free content on Facebook and YouTube. Podcast I mentioned earlier, all kinds of live conventions and such. All kinds of things that you can do to help you connect with what's now become a worldwide global train club. What could you contribute? Well, here's just a couple of ideas. Post some photos to Facebook about what you're working on or what interests you. Write an article for a newsletter or a magazine, and in particular for the NRail newsletter. We need those articles all the time, right? Speak at a local division or on one of these Zooms. Raise your hand and put yourself into the fray here, because as you can see on these sessions every week, every month that we have, there's some really, really great stuff. Sometimes it's a 5 or 10 minute clinic, and they're just, I don't know about you, but I can't wait to try my hand at Crepe Myrtles right now. That's fantastic, right? Share a clinic, write a blog, do something with the podcast, YouTube. Basically, there's all kinds of ways that you can contribute once you get out of your own way and decide that you have something that we want to hear. So here's a recap. Join the organizations, find your tribe, get yourself together with a plan, get focused on what it is you want to do over the next 2 years, 3 years, 5 years. Get busy building something, forget about perfection, make some mistakes, jump in, get some glue on your hands, assemble some kits or some rolling stock. Think about things like the NMRA Achievement Program and other ways and other places that you could sort of have that structure to help push you into new areas that you want to get into. Consider operating and playing with trains like the real trains are, and then sharing, contributing, and engaging with the rest of us. And of course, not all of these things are going to work for everybody, but maybe one or two of these ideas will resonate with you. Peter Drucker, the management guru, once said, even the most grandiose strategies must eventually degenerate into work, right? So you talk and you talk and you talk. I found that the really good model railroaders, and maybe even more importantly, the ones who are enjoying the hobby the most, are people that just do things. Just get out there and do it and make it happen, and you'll enjoy the hobby. So you've got the choice, you and I both, right? Are we going to be rail barons like these guys, Gold and Harriman and Vanderbilt and Morgan and Carnegie, or are we going to be sort of armchair railroaders for another 5 years or another 10 years, or couch potatoes, sort of talking but not doing? Finally, best piece of advice I've ever heard, Yogi Berra: when you come to a fork in the road, take it. Thanks very much. Enjoyed sharing my ideas with you today. Razor?
Thank you, John. I tell you one thing I found out, that I'm going to have to give Speed a call and find out how to get something like that going with me.
You bet. Absolutely.
That sounds interesting. Matter of fact, Bruce and I may give him a call, because that sounds like a presentation needs to be made on how he does that. That's really interesting.
Absolutely, yep.
There's some fantastic stuff there. And Gordy Robinson, who's the new incoming president of the NMRA, helps Speed set up all the paperwork. And it's just an example of where, thinking about things differently and trying to overcome some of the impediments that we were all sort of couldn't get together is turned into making something really fun.
All right. Well, thank you, John. Did Carlos ever make it? Carlos, did you ever get to it? So I guess we'll have to reschedule his presentation.
Yep.
You can see that Bruce has popped up our little questionnaire, And we'd like you to check that out before we shut this thing down, because once we shut it down, it will be too late. Looks like even without Carlos, we're right at our 1 hour, so we're pretty good on schedule. Again, our meeting next month is July the 17th, when we will have 4 presentations. Lee Williams will talk about detailing streets and roads. Walt Vail with Showcase Miniatures will be talking about his business and what he has to offer the N-Scale community. And Dick Ohlendorf, as we just heard at the beginning of this meeting, has volunteered to present his layout, Santa Fe Coast to Coast. And our main topic will be John Wallace, who's going to talk about NTRaK 2.0, a little different way to use NTRaK modules. Let's see. The last thing we want to talk about is if anybody has any questions for the presenters, now is the time to do it. Just unmute yourself, and you don't have to actually unmute. If you'll just hold, if you're on a computer, hold your space bar down, you can talk, and when you release, it will go back to mute. So if anyone has any questions for me or Steve or John, that would be the time to ask them.
Razor, I'm just going to mention again that for those of you who are a little late, our opening announcement was that the FTs have shipped from Microtrain. So if you ordered one, you'll be seeing one in the mail probably in about 2 weeks, because they've got to go to the store and then Neil will send them out. But they are shipping now. Speaking about Microtrains, one of the reasons that the FTs were late was because they are short-staffed. They need about 2 or 3 full-time people. And one of the suggestions that was made is, you know, summer's coming up, vacation time. Oregon is a great place to have a vacation. So just go ahead, plan on spending a month up there, call Eric Smith and say, hey, I'm going to go work for you and do model railroading for a month at Microtrains and help them out. So it's a good summer activity.
Super.
When you leave them, Bruce.
Okay.
What time is it?
One message, John. They wanted to know if you could put that slide back up of the Y. I guess that's the Katie
Okay.
Y that you have there.
Yeah.
Somebody wants to take a screenshot of it.
Let's see. Can I do that again? Let's see if this is working. Is that it?
That's it. So we'll give him a minute to take his picture.
Quite a rail fanning shot, huh?
Any other questions for any of our presenters today? And again, for those of you that weren't here at the beginning, we do have slots for presentations in the future, both the 10-minute short presentations, the 30-minute, he's got it. So John,
Okay.
you can disconnect again.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we do need presenters
Yeah.
for layout.
Razor, let me interrupt for a second. I know some of you are thinking, well, gee, you know, I can't really do a very long, polished presentation. If you just have a couple of minutes of video you want to share, and then open it up to questions, that's another way of approaching it. You can just go ahead and show some video, say this is my layout, and then open up the questions. It doesn't have to be a full 10 minutes. If it's shorter, that's not a problem either. So don't be shy. As John mentioned, one of the joys of this hobby is sharing and letting other people see what you've done.
All right, well, thank you all very much for attending this presentation. Again, our next one is July the 17th. We hope you all have a great 4th of July weekend, which I believe is, what, 2 weeks away or next weekend? I'm running, I guess it's
2 weeks, weekend after
2
next.
weeks from now. And keep in touch and think about what you can share with the rest of us, because we'd like to hear from you. Thank you all very much, and have a great rest of your Saturday and a great Sunday.
Great.
Bruce, it looks like we got up to about 77 people today, is the biggest I saw. Did you
Yep.
see?
I'm going to disconnect now.